the extent that they go to whitewash Christopher Columbus's crimes and attitudes is really amazing. So, anyways, I won't front load this too much. This is what kids in South Carolina will have access to for learning about Christopher Columbus.
Exactly a paradise of civilization, and the native people were far from peaceful.
But you just said the Taino were peaceful.
They pretty much are. But there are other tribes who aren't. The Taino I had met had cuts and scars and bruises all over them. I asked why, and they told me about the Caribs, who are vicious, warring cannibals.
Cannibals? Like they
Eat people, see.
Whoa!
Right? Hey, all the things that are bad in the world I come from, jealousy, lying, murder, war, it all exists in the land I just found too. But in Europe, we draw the line at things like eating people and human sacrifice. Some of the native folks from where I just left do those things regularly.
Pause it just real quick. That's not actually even true. Europeans at that time were eating like mummified remains, especially the elites, as a way to live forever.
No, yeah, superstition in Europe.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, this is a really kind of disgusting, thing that they use, particularly like you see them use this against like the Aztecs too, right? This is a kind of famous fixation of these apologists for mass slaughter. Is I don't know, literally at this point, like reviving some of the nastiest fantasies of the native peoples to this part of the world as being uncivilized, extremely dangerous, maybe not even properly like the rest of us. This is like old school Euro racism.
And I know we're going to hear about Israel from our boy Dennis Prager, and maybe this is a little bit unfair to include, but Spain had a bit of a history with Jewish people. At that time.
That is actually...
And our boy Chris Columbus wrote to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel of Spain, "Your Highness, as Catholic Christians and princes who love the holy Christian faith and the propagation of it, and who are enemies of the sect of Mahoma, Islam, and all the idolatries and heresies, resolved to send me, Cristobal Colon, to the said parts of India to see the said princes, with a view that they might be converted to our holy faith. Thus, after having turned out all the Jews from your kingdoms and lordships, your highnesses gave orders for me that with a sufficient fleet I should go to the said parts of India. I shall forget sleep." I mean, is this context at all relevant? Like when we're talking about how he felt about any sort of people he might colonize. Also, that's how the Spanish felt about Jews, Dennis. So maybe try to confront that in this shit.
Yeah, well, he's about to do... a force field against any criticism against him in a second, Matt.
Beautiful.
You will not expect, actually, you definitely will. You will not expect what it is that he's going to talk about next.
So, these people in your time who think it was a peaceful paradise are misinformed. Or lying.
Yeah, but what about slavery? You didn't deny that.
Deny? No. Slavery is as old as time and has taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? I don't see the problem.
Well, in our time, we view slavery as being evil and terrible.
Yeah. Again, this is for children. Like, really, like, let's also be very clear and just like not forget this. This is content targeted at children.
Yeah.
So the lesson is slavery is better than being killed. Can you argue with that?
Yeah.
Can you argue with that with your master's degree, Matthew?
Yeah, you can. I mean, there's something called the Black Legend that all sort of English speakers at that time, when they had their eye, like Cromwell, when they had his eye on Jamaica, they're like, hey, there's a lot of riches over in these colonies. And also those Spanish people are really treating those natives horribly. Like there were critics of this even at the time. Now, were they actually even better once they got there and did the colonizing? No, they did a lot of the exact same things, so much that we don't even really remember that the Spanish were particularly remembered for being brutal in the colonies. But the idea that, no, this is just fine, everyone does it, is such a it's so chicken shit.
I mean, and this is we'll play a bit of it. This is the next 2 minutes of the video is just Christopher Columbus saying, "You cannot judge me by any standard that you hold today," which is a great lesson again for kids to learn about Christopher Columbus. And that's the thing is about PragerU, right? Is if they just and because we have all these videos, we're cutting some. We're going to do more in the post game. If they just wanted to sort of do subtle tilts on these kind of things, to give it a little skewed version of history to, maybe start people on the path of being a conservative down the line, they could maybe get away with it. But instead, at the end of every video for these kids, there will just be a 3-minute thing that's usually not really like directly connected or tangentially related for them to just make an argument about like why having any criticism of any figure from history is incorrect.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, the choice of it's better than dying, right? Like that kind of gives it away that there were some people who thought it might have been bad, which is the people who were subjugated by it that had to be compelled to under threat of murder. But
yeah, they were like, no, that's literally what they were saying. It's like, hey, do you want to die? This is better than dying. Yeah.
No, I guess I made my it's Kanye. Yeah.
Magnifico, that's wonderful.
Wait.
I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? I don't see the problem.
Well, in our time, we view slavery as being evil and terrible.
Magnifico, that's wonderful. I am glad humanity has reached such a time. But you...
First of all, he would not say that.
No.
You have these people living together as equals? Wait, no, she should tell them about the Jews in America.
Yeah, oh, fantastic.
The multi-faith society that we have.
One thing he might say was
heresy.
And a trigger warning, folks, for this one. While I was in the boat, I captured a very beautiful Carib woman whom they said the Lord Admiral gave to me. When I had taken her to my cabin, she was naked, as was their custom. I was filled with a desire to take my pleasure with her and attempted to satisfy my desire. She was unwilling and so treated me with her nails that I wished I had never begun. But to cut a long story short, which is funny that phrase was used back then.
Yeah.
But to cut a long story short, I then took a piece of rope and whipped her soundly, and she let forth such incredible screams that you would not have believed your ears. Eventually, we came to such terms, I assure you, that you would have thought that she had been brought up in a school for whores.
Holy shit. Yeah, so super cool. So again, I just want to
but also Magnifico. I'm glad
Magnifico. I'm glad that they're free now. We have other videos to get to, but I do just want to finish this moral universe that he's going to put forward here, because I think this is in a lot of ways the reason they're focused on history is to do whitewashing. But these are the kind of argument that you're about to hear is a very kind of typical cultish argument. And what makes it cultish is that it's immune from logic. It's something that if you learn this way of thinking about a subject, nothing that is ever said or argued against it can move you, because you are basically saying, I'm taking as a first principle that I cannot be moved by this kind of argument. But anyways, let's hear it.
You said you're from 500 years in the future? How can you come here to the 15th century and judge me by your standards from the 21st century? For those in the future to look back and do this is, well, estúpido.
Are you calling me dumb?
Certainly not. I can tell you're a very smart young lady, but the idea of throwing away the past because of your present values is... Listen, I love and am thankful for the ancient Greeks, but they did lots of things that here in 1493 I do not agree with. They permitted lifestyles and worshiped gods that, as a Christian, I think is very bad. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't respect and honor all the incredible and amazing things they did.
So, good and bad is based on the time you live in?
That is a great question. I told you I knew you were smart. Some things are clearly bad, no matter when they happen. But for other things,
Which apparently,
Was
like
slavery?
slavery and killing off native peoples
So
is not
slavery not one of
included
those.
in that. What?
Yeah, slavery not included, but the gay stuff that the Greeks were doing.
I mean, this is. I mean, seriously, I'm not nitpicking. This is insane. All right, let's just let him finish his thought, and then we can move on to some of these other lessons that we need to learn.
Before you judge, you must ask yourself, what did the culture and society of the time treat as no big deal? Not everyone can time travel as you do and see how normal becomes very not normal.
Sorry,
Something's
again,
wrong.
like most people didn't have an idea of that. Most people weren't thinking about the slave trade unless they were immediately implicated in the slave trade. And the full like awareness of how bloody it was something like a bit of a PR issue for centuries that like constantly were dealt with in law. Like this is one of the things that like the House of Burgesses, like these are the types of things like the conditions. Like, you know what, guys, shit. I forget what the Royal African Company in London. They're like, hey, you know what? We got some business to attend to. Too many of the people we're enslaving are jumping off the ships, so we need to figure out some way to do. Like that was business to them.
No, I think it is honestly a very important, like, moral and philosophical point. Is that like no, people thought this was bad, you know, and particularly in the American context, you get this whole thing. It's like, oh, these brilliant minds and philosophers and framers of the United States Constitution, you know, they didn't really recognize that slavery was wrong. It's like, no, people recognized that it was wicked and evil. They had to try to convince themselves because every human like part of their body is saying this is wrong. That's why you have these bizarre phrases like the peculiar institution, right? Because people knew there was something wrong with this fundamentally at the time.
And they know this too, because they'll bend over backwards saying, look, at Thomas Jefferson actually knew it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Thomas Jefferson had enough time to just sit around in his slave plantation and philosophize. But ultimately, like it was too ingrained in the economy for him to do anything about it. But like, yeah, he knew it too. That's the power of capitalism and capital, that it can perpetuate massive injustice, even if people can get enlightened about it for brief moments, on the porch.
So we have some more lessons to get to. I think we're definitely going to do a big extra credit portion in the post-game, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. But before we do that, Matt, there's one last lesson I need to share with you in the main show. So they do these things on PragerU. Again, this is going to be in schools for children in South Carolina, amongst other states, by the way. South Carolina is not alone in being one of these states that a company like PragerU is trying to take advantage of. They do these videos again for children that are supposed to be like PragerU looks around the world, and their stories from India, Sudan, the Netherlands that are supposed to sort of teach us a little bit about the world. Ironically, though, a lot of these videos sort of seem to teach us that your conservative uncle is right about everything. This one, just to catch people up, because again, just like any good parable, all of the lessons become clear at the end. This is the story of a young girl in Colombia, poor girl, a poor but happy young woman who has grown up on her family's plantain farm in Colombia. And she looks out about what's going on in the rest of the world and comes to realize that her dream for a better future revolves around the United States successfully building the wall. But let's play this for y'all.
Abuelita down the hill on stretchers.
So just the quickest of updates for folks. She lives near the border, this young Colombian woman, and she meets some Venezuelan refugees who are also trying to cross the border. She knows how to get across the border because she lives near it. She helps them out, and their tale unfortunately ends in tremendous difficulty for this grandmother and her granddaughter.
And people like to mention Venezuela just to remind folks the one top primary reason, of course there are others, but why there are people fleeing Venezuela is because we destroyed their oil economy to the tune of a Great Depression worth. And that was their number one commodity. So not great for your politics when that happens. But anyway.
Cruz explains how much danger they were in. Sophia hangs her head. The more she listens to him talk about the problems near the border, the more she understands. Unsecured borders bring crime, violence, and suffering. Cruz tells her that strong borders are more humane. They make sure that people like Alejandra move to a new country legally without the risks. By letting countries control who comes in and out, strong borders protect communities and reduce the power that cartels have.
Just really quick, by the way, just like in living memory in the state of Texas, it has been the hard border. The harder the border gets, that is the most beneficial to the cartels.
100%. This is so obvious. Like the relationship is like this with hardening of the border. Strength of cartels.
It's
a one-to-one relationship. What was it? Sorry, just one thing. George H.W. Bush did a whole bunch of stuff in the Gulf of Mexico back when he was president, and they spent a whole bunch of millions and millions on boats and shit, and just started going through the land. And they didn't slow it down at all. All it did was this prohibition is capitalize the people that get around it for profit.
Sophia and Fernando apologize to their parents for breaking their trust. Pablo and Juanita are so grateful to have their...
So, by the way, just to catch people up, this sweet, caring young woman and her brother see that this family and people are struggling on their journey to the United States through Colombia, and they decide, since they know the path, that they will help them across this. So this is the weepy eye,
children back safely, that they throw a fiesta that night. Everyone is enjoying rice, arepas, and of course, cooked plantains. For a while, Alejandra and Abuelita stay with Sofia's family. Cruz offers to help them request asylum from the Colombian government. Unfortunately, the legal immigration process moves slowly. One morning, Sofia wakes up and finds that Alejandra and...
Sorry, do we want to expedite that? Do we want to invest?
I know, it's honestly insane that got through.
In that process?
I guess it's a kind of dig at Colombia, Right,
it's at their bureaucracy, but
but ours would be really good.
Let's get Abuelita in.
Abuelita are gone. With the unsecured border so close and migrant groups passing often, they...
I love even the art of this. If you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but even the art of this scene it's just the unsecured border is just like moths to a flame. You know what I mean? It's just it's so mysterious what could be on the other side.
Simply could not wait. Another harvest is coming up, but this time, Sophia and Fernando are focused on school. Sophia hopes Colombia can finally secure its border. When it does, and when the United States secures its border again, the dangerous migrant route will no longer be an option or a magnet for danger and suffering. As Cruz points out, strong borders bring safety, rule of law, and cooperation between countries. Things everyone needs for a better life.
I mean, really, honestly, kind of evil and insane. Because the fact of the matter is that, as for example, the American border has become more and more militarized and dangerous, it has not slowed, the migrants. Rather, it has meant that we're seeing horrifying videos of people trying to sneak in 18-wheelers and cooking alive in the valley. I mean, really, really, really brutal stuff. Because what causes migration, this is an explanation for children. But like, this is something that is written by adults. The argument here from the Psychopaths of PragerU is that migrants are just kind of like looking around and like, oh, is this secured? Is this door locked? Or is that door locked? Oh, I guess if it's unlocked, then we're going to keep going and keep going. Instead of, my family has been killed by, you know, gang violence, oftentimes in countries where the United States has sponsored those kind of organizations to stop left-wing governments from coming into power or maintaining power.
Or exported them like MS-13.
Or all of the wealth in my society has been extracted and has gone to El Norte. You know, so we are following where the money is that has been taken from the land that we come from, right? No, none of those conditions are what creates migration. What creates migration is not having a tall enough fence and not having enough border guards, which everybody knows. Every single person knows is true, is not how it works. And we could get bogged down in responding to these videos, but I think the fundamental issue is this. That's not something that kids should be engaging with. Not just like that is not something that children should be engaging with, because it's presenting to them an extremely warped view of the world. It's not educating them about Colombia, right? There's nothing. All I know about Colombia is that plantain farmers dream of a day when the United States has a very tall wall on the Arizona-Mexico border.
It's a downgrade from the propaganda that I was fed as a kid, which is like Ronald Reagan.
Yeah. Well,
say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. How dare you not let the people get to where they want to be, you oppressor. It's wild how we've just done a complete 180 on that shit. It's pretty fucking depressing.
Well, we're not done, obviously, after what we just heard from Matt with your re-education program. So we're going to have to dive deep into that in the post-game. Patreon.com/leftreckoning to get access to that. Come and join the other side of the show. We always have a lot of fun over there, and I hope you will come hang out with us.
Absolutely, folks. See you in a little bit.